and welcome to everyone who's stayed on after the alcoholic drinks or getting a dose of what fashion can do for us and what fashion has indeed done for India. We have with us today Palak Shah, founder and CEO of Ekaya Banaras, and I hope, and Adi Kitroo, who's the MD of Johnson Fine Kashmir. I hope Adi is able to join us. Yes, he is. So welcome, Adi. Is Adi on?
Hi.
Hi, Palak. How are you?
Very well. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you. So Palak and Adi. So what we will talk about now is about the business of fashion. And we have both Palak and Adi. And let me just take a moment to tell the audience about them. Palak is the CEO of Ekaya Banaras, which is a absolutely top-end brand of Indian, let's say, hand-woven, handcrafted saris, and is bringing the age-old traditions of Banaras to the world in a contemporary manner with state-of-the-art design work and techniques. Works with over 8,000 odd weavers in the Banaras area. We also have Adi, and Adi's business, Josephine, I'm assuming that's the right pronunciation. We'll talk to him more about it. Is a younger company. It's about 5 years old compared to Palak's, I think, about 70 odd years of tradition and heritage. So we'll talk to them about their businesses. So welcome, both of you. Welcome, Adi. Can you hear us? Hello, Adi, can you hear us? Palak, can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Yeah. Aditya, can you hear me?
I don't think he can hear you.
No, he can't. Oh, gosh. I'm not sure if he's able to. I think he's muted. Aditya, you're muted, so I can't hear you. Yeah, no, you're muted. You're still muted.
Unmute.
Great. Now we can hear you. Yeah. Awesome. Thank you.
Brilliant.
Okay. So, so let me start off, by talking to you guys about each of your businesses, and there's a contrast in both of them. One is a decades old business, very very traditional, Banarasi saris, lot of weavers involved in multiple techniques, from Tanchoi to Jamdani and all of that. And you're now trying to contemporize and make it for the modern Indian wearer. On the other hand, we've got Aditya Kitroo with Josephine, who's a younger company, about 5 years old, I believe,
Yes.
and who's taking a traditional product, but offering it to the world, right? And we'll talk about how this has happened and what your learnings have been. So Palak, if you can take a few minutes and tell us about Ekaya, and thereafter we'll move to Adi and we'll learn more about, Josephine.
Thank you very much. So thank you for the kind introduction, first of all. So to begin with, actually, Ekaya was founded in 2012. But our roots actually go back to 120 years ago when my great-grandfather moved from Patan in Gujarat to come to Banaras in search of some sort of business. And then we chose to work with Banarsi textiles. And my great-grandmother started it, moving on to my grandfather, to my dad, and now passed on to me. So what I got was actually a wholesale business. I got a business which was sort of really archaic. I got a business where, in terms of design, we had changed a lot, but in terms of the way we sold and sort of like the way we marketed the product, was still very old and archaic. And that's when Ekaya was handed over to me. My dad's business was handed over to me. I was actually studying in London, and I'd come back to India to look for a job. And my dad wanted to start this business called Ekaya. And he wanted to open a retail business because he really wanted to sort of showcase the true potential of Banarsi textiles and to really show the real innovativeness in the business. Of course, I mean, I was always baffled by the question that as to why Indian textiles are not sold like luxury items like your Hermes, Louis Vuitton products, right? Because at the end of the day, they are also selling craftsmanship and products from their country. Hence, Ikaya began really with that quest to really change and like really challenge the existing ways in which Indian textiles are sold, in the way they are looked upon, in the whole target audience that they are sort of targeted to. And that's when Ikaya began. I started in 2012 when I was all of 21. I turned 21 with Ikaya actually in the first month.
Wonderful,
A
wonderful.
young, very ambitious girl who had no idea what she was getting into, but I feel sometimes ignorance is really bliss, because I feel like when you don't know what you're getting into, you can ask any question, then you
Yes,
can do
yes,
whatever you want
absolutely.
to.
No barriers.
And there are no barriers, right? I mean, like nobody ever told me that, hey, that Indian textiles are not supposed to be sold like your Louis
No.
Vuitton handbags. Indian textiles are not supposed to be sold as luxury items. People will never come. So I really went out there and I did it, and I happened to be successful at it.
Excellent.
So it's ninth year for me in the business. We now have got 5 stores. I just opened a store last month in a pandemic. So that's
Wow.
been one big achievement for us.
Fantastic.
Um, continuing to innovate, continuing, like, despite the pandemic, we are sort of still giving newer collections to be woven by our weavers in hope that this will sell in the future, and in hope
Right.
that the weavers also should not get demotivated and should not go back to like thinking that their business is also over. So 5 stores and running an e-commerce presence. Here we are. I am here, and
Fantastic.
this is what
Fantastic.
I'm about.
Let me know. No, that's great. I'll come back to you and probe you a little bit more.
Please.
And now over to Adi. I mean, let's hear your story. How you came about to start Josephine. And I keep pinching myself to make sure I'm getting the pronunciation right.
Yes, I guess Josephine is the right pronunciation, and the reason we named it such was because the person who actually popularized Kashmir, or Pashmina as we call it in India, was Napoleon's wife, Josephine, who many also consider to be the first fashion icon of the modern age. So it's like a tribute to her, the name. Now, coming to your question as to how the genesis of Josephine and how it started. Now, I had a little experience in the textile industry because I'd worked with my father for about a year and a half, and he used to run a buying house at the time. Now, Kashmir is a $6 billion industry globally. However, the
$6 billion.
yes, however,
Wow.
the birthplace of this industry is Kashmir. Kashmir, or Cash, is
Yes.
primarily the old Anglo-French spelling for Kashmir as we know it today. Now, we thought that, listen, this is where it's born. So it's like champagne. You get sparkled wine from across the world, but then there's champagne from Champagne, which is something else. Now, similar thing is when it comes to Kashmir from Kashmir, or what we call Pashmina. So the idea was that there are two fundamental things that make a fabric good. One is the quality of raw material that goes in, and second is obviously how you turn that raw material into a fabric. The quality of raw material in India from Ladakh is the best cashmere in the world, the raw fiber. And when it comes to the know-how of how to convert the fiber into fabric, the people in Kashmir have been doing it for 600 years. In fact, they're the people who created the cashmere fabric in the first place. So that is where we thought that why is it that India has the capability to produce the best cashmere fabric in the world, yet whenever one speaks about the great names of Kashmir globally, it's always an Italian or a Scottish name that comes up, right?
Right.
So that is where the idea came into my mind. So it was in 2015 then we started it. So me, along with a friend of mine at the time, Safia, so she's currently the marketing director of the company. So we decided that we'll start Josephine. So it was over a coffee and I was at the Herengracht in Amsterdam. So I said, okay, now in case we need to make this happen, we need to solve the fundamental problems with the whole Pashmina industry. And that is primarily the fact that it's fragmented into multiple stages. And that's where design intervention and quality control doesn't happen. So for me, it was a big step then, moving back to Kashmir. So I moved back to Kashmir. We started from the grassroots level. We said, okay, let's start as manufacturers. Let's become wholesalers. Let's become exporters. And then let's progress into a B2C brand. So one of the first things we did is that we thought that, considering that we have the know-how to make the best fabric in the world, let's work on it. So in 2017, we ended up in creating a fabric which was around 20% finer than the best any European mill had done so far. And it was a fabric that was made by Kashmiri women in India, in Kashmir, using ancient tools. There was no intense algorithm-based spinning machinery or anything involved. It was done in traditional Indian charkhas and traditional Indian handlooms, and it went 25% finer than the best mills of Biella.
Fantastic.
And then, of course, we started supplying to different brands, different companies, and now we're looking for the next big step for us, which is going B2C.
Excellent. So this is both the stories are so heartening that driven by this sense of purpose of creating a brand out of India that really becomes the numero uno in its category, right? Quite fantastic. One of the challenges that one sees when trying to create a a product and then a brand out of that product is the amount of training and design inputs one needs to be able to provide to the back end, namely, the artisans, the weavers, the craftspeople, and all of that. And because the markets tend to be in a very far removed from the people who are actually making these, right? And there seems to be a disconnect. I mean, how does one take a market need uh, and contemporize the style and things of the kind, and then give the design input, train the people who are actually used to a particular style of working for long. How do you do that whole process? Let me go to Palak, because and then come back to you.
So basically, the thing is that all along in the textile industry, this is what's been happening, right? The customers used to dictate what is made. And hence,
Right.
I feel because the customers dictated what is made, the market never really grew. Their whole design vocabulary never really grew. And hence, whatever has been made, whatever you look at it and you say this is Banarsi or this is brocade or this is Tanchoi, the same identity has been going on for years. And hence your Indian textiles stayed where they stayed all along. So
Right.
I feel like so there are like two ways of looking at it, right? One is that you keep on teaching them the same thing over and over again, and they pass on the same thing over and over again, and you remain where you are. But the second thing is you come up with a design intervention and teach them a whole new skill and a whole new technique, whereas you're not just sustaining the craft, but you're also sustaining their skill. And you're sustaining themselves, you're sustaining them in the business by teaching them something new and motivating them every single day.
So how easy is it to be able to teach them new things by way of
So
design and all
it's
things like
almost like, I'll tell you, it's almost like if you know your trade at the back of your hand, you can teach somebody something new. So
Yeah.
if you know the game of weaving better than the weavers do, you can teach them. But if in case I'm a layman and I'm the first generation in a business, very hopeful that I'm going to change it, it's not possible because in like
that?
trades like I'm sure like cashmere as well, and like for a trade like mine, you need generation of know-how.
Right.
So
So it's
if I
accumulated
try
knowledge.
and be hopeful and I say that I'm gonna go to Kashmir and I'm gonna really change the way Kashmiri shawls are made or Pashmina is made, I will not be able to because there's only so much I know about it.
Right.
For
So
me, I'm very fortunate because my great grandfather, my grandfather, and my father, along with his brothers, they are all this is their bread and butter, and they
wonderful.
have really sunk into this completely. So
Right.
even when we are doing any new collaboration or any new collection, we are the ones telling the weavers and telling them like, "Hey, this is how you do it." And they are also shocked. And I feel like that's where there are like new neurons created in their brains, and they're like, "Oh, we're also learning something new." And this is an interesting product to make. And I feel like the whole mundane and monotony of it goes away.
Got it. Got it. And Adi, is your experience the same?
No, my experience is different, obviously, because for me it's a 5-year-old company. But the reason that we've been able to do it is, I think the fundamental thing is that if you are, a trader, a supplier, a brand, it's very important to know how the loom works. Once you understand how the loom works, then you can communicate a lot better with an artisan. So rather than telling that, hey, instead of these motifs, make another, go into another design philosophy. If you understand how the loom works, you communicate to them in their languages, like inches per end and things
Got it.
of that sort.
Got it.
That's step number one. Now, once you do that, then it's not overnight transition that you can get a person making one sort of motifs for the last 20 years onto another sort of motif. There would be a couple of pieces that will not be up to the mark, right? That's a sacrifice you make as a business. But then once you make that sacrifice and you come up with new products, you come up with products with designs which buyers overseas want, which are contemporary today, then that pays off because now you're finally able to create another category of products which you were not able to create before. So
Got it.
yes, it's possible, but the fundamental thing is understand how a loom works, uh, be as knowledgeable as the artisan is, or if possible more knowledgeable than the artisan, and ideas will flow.
Understand. So what you're basically saying is that there's a set of accumulated knowledge on one side.
Yes.
Two, there is a lot of experiential knowledge that you pick up, for example, about the loom. And then there's a market knowledge about what is it that your end customers would probably want. And the ability to fuse all of this. I would think of it as it's the intellectual property of the business, right? I mean, another person who starts a sari brand or a cashmere is not going to be able to do it because they lack that intellectual property. Is that a fair way to characterize it?
No, I feel like, sorry, Rita, do you want to
Yeah,
Yeah,
go?
please go ahead.
I feel like another person can do it. I mean, there have been so many new entrants in the business, in the the textile business, and in the Kashmir business. But I feel they're all selling what is existing in the market, and they're all relying on the weaver's knowledge of it. Like, but
so
to
your
really
knowledge
get
is
that
your
edge,
intellectual property.
and to really sort of like create state of the art product, because my goal is not to sell. My goal is to put India on the global luxury map,
Right.
and to really put the product of these artisans on the global map, like, so to make it comparable to your Italian byproducts, or your French byproducts. But the goal of other people is to simply sell. So when you're simply selling, you pick up from the market, you know what's selling, and you do it. I'm also educating my artisans, and I'm educating my consumers.
Correct. So that's your intellectual property. So what
Yes,
I'm saying
absolutely.
is you have a certain design aesthetic, you understand the market, you understand the back end technology and the weavers and their techniques, and the ability to fuse all of it makes Ekaya unique and makes
Absolutely.
Josephine unique. So
Absolutely.
another company cannot be an
Wonderful.
exact
Yeah.
replica of either of the two of you. So
Yeah.
in that sense, it's is that right, Adi? Would you agree with that characterization?
Yes, exactly. You have to only if you're able to fuse the front end and the back end, make it seamless. It's only then that you can innovate, come up with new designs, and therefore new offerings, and hence expand the business that you run.
Right. One of the challenges that Indian products have had is their innate inability, and there are multiple reasons for this, of trying to of creating a successful brand. They've always tended to be more on the commodity side, more on the raw material side, and whereas both of you are very keenly working towards creating a brand. Help us understand what that journey has been like. What have been the learnings about trying to create a brand? So tomorrow, if Palak stands up and says Ekaya, everybody says, "Oh my God!" Right? Somebody says Josephine, you say, "Oh my God, they are the top guys in Kashmir." Right? So that's the power of the brand. So what has that transition or the journey been for you guys? Starting with Adi and then to Palak. Yeah.
So of course, I mean, our journey isn't that old. See, it's a short journey. It's just been
Yeah, I
5
know.
years.
Yeah.
Yeah, but yes, of course. I mean, when the moment you start a business, there's obviously a struggle, and especially when it comes to when you're not trading in textiles, but when you're actually manufacturing textiles as well. It takes time to understand, and this is not a mechanized process that we're talking about, that you buy a certain number of looms and set up a mill. You have little workshops. Like, I have workshops where I have a single person working at his house. The largest workshop I have is where I have 11 people working, and then there's some with 5. So it's all fragmented. In Kashmir, in other places people are able to get people together, but due to whatever reasons you can't do that in Kashmir. But I think it's a learning process. You also burn your hands along the way. But the only thing which I think I should have done in the entire journey is probably spoken more to people who had already sort of been through it, right? And learn from their experience rather than experiencing some things myself and then learning them.
Got
But but yes, I mean, at the beginning, one has to learn a lot. But once one does learn the ropes, things become a lot easier. Definitely,
it. Okay.
definitely.
And Palak, what's been your experience?
So my own experience of creating a brand, I think it's a beautiful journey, by the way, but it's also a very long journey. And for me, it's been very surprising, because in the beginning, you have to constantly make an effort. You have to like stick to your grit, and you have to do a lot of sacrifices, because you have to choose a path. You can't. I feel like, let's say, for example, I have chosen to create a Banarsi sari brand. In the beginning, I do remember my dad coming and telling me, or my uncle coming and telling me, is coming and telling you that, hey, this product is selling, why don't you keep it at the store? Oh my God, Kanjipuram is selling, why don't you keep it at the store? I stuck to my grit. I actually sacrificed a lot of my sales and a lot of my branding to be known as somebody. So that requires a lot of sacrifice, a lot of saying no to.
Exactly.
I could today be a 100 crore company if I would have gotten everything under the belt, but then I would not be Kaya today.
Correct.
I would not be known as a game changer today. I do also, like, a lot of collections that I've made have also, some of them have been unsuccessful. I mean, I'm not a genius, I mean, like, as in, we also make mistakes. Now, I did it for simply for design intervention. I did it for design surprise. I did it to sort of shock the clients and to show them the different possibilities of it. So I feel like branding includes a lot of sacrifice. And I feel, and a personal experience that I feel like that's been, is that you continue working on a brand and you may not see results for the longest time. And then one day, overnight, you'll see your brand placed somewhere else.
Right.
So, like, for 8 years, I remember, I mean, a lot of editors, a lot of magazines used to always tell us that, oh, you guys are not a brand, you guys are a shop. You guys are a shop. And it kept on going on for 5 years. Like, I was like, you know what, I'm going to break it. I'm going to continue doing what I'm doing. I'm not going to be bogged down by what they're saying and actually become a shop just because, they think that I'm a shop. And overnight, Sanjay, and, like, it's really weird because overnight during lockdown, Ikaya suddenly became a brand.
Fabulous.
And suddenly Ikaya, I mean, like, as in I was featured on the cover of Grazia along with Sabyasachi, Manish Malhotra, Anita Dongre. And that's when I smiled and I'm like, it took me 9 years to get here. No, but I'm really glad that I'm here. And it's only because I stuck to my grit. And as opposed to, like, something that Aaditya just said, that, you have to take feedback from people who have been in the journey. I'll tell you a funny story, because we guys were actually wholesalers turned retailers. I mean, as in, my wholesale business is still on, but we actually entered retail. So it was very obvious for us to seek advice from the other retailers, the other sari retailers.
Right.
But the other sari retailers were all going through a massive slump.
Yeah.
Because, saris are not being sold in India, no customers, like Banarsi saris, no women wanted to enter the store. And I still remember sitting in one of the biggest sari stores in Chennai, and he happens to be my dad's best friend. And it was, I think, the first month of Ikaya, or the second, or whatever, I don't remember. And he said, you're making the biggest mistake of your life by entering into retail. You guys are going to fail, and how? The sari industry is dead. You guys are opening stores. And my dad actually walked out scared. And I'm like, to my dad, I'm like, you know what, Dad? They don't know what we're getting into. And I didn't know what I was getting into, to be very honest. It's 21-year-old giving gyan to her dad. I didn't know. But I'm really glad I continued to do it. I continued to fight. And, like, I feel like, and here I am. I mean, in a pandemic, I feel blessed to be opening a store, that too at DLF Emporio, which is a hub of designers. I am not now placed where, I mean, like, I've done collaborations with French designers, and it's only because I didn't know any better.
Yep.
I was like, let's jump, let's try. Why not? What's the maximum that'll happen? I'll fail.
Yeah. So I think you made two very important points, right, which will be useful for entrepreneurs. One is don't be afraid of trying, right?
Never.
That is one big thing. Just go for it, and just because somebody's experience, makes them sort of discourage you, there's no reason for you to let go of your dream and your conviction. The second is knowing what you will not do. You talked about the focus and everything else. That's saying, this is what I want to do, and this is what I will not do, right?
Mm-hmm.
What you will not do is equally important, because it's so easy to get into, let's say, retailing Kanchivaram saris, right? Which you didn't want to do.
No, I didn't. And I remember I feel like it's very important to have your focus.
Exactly. So
my bigger vision is to take India international. My vision right now is not to open 10 stores in India.
Right.
Even though opportunities will come to me.
Yeah.
Because I'm attracting it. I've got to pick out what opportunities I want, opportunities align with my bigger vision.
So Adi, when you launched, right, and your own experience of getting into the branding and all of that, and you, after hearing what Palak had to say, would you respond and agree with her, or would there be differences in the way you would think about it?
No, I would agree with almost everything that Palak has mentioned. In fact, the whole idea that it takes time. Obviously, it's taken 9 years, and Palak mentioned that during the COVID crisis, it just boom went up. It's a journey. The journey takes time. A lot of people sort of get disheartened after 2 or 3 years and say that things aren't really taking off. But you don't know when things take off in this business, right? Because there is an element of luck, the randomness of the universe, as people call it. So you need to have that grit, that determination. And I mean, for us, for example, the first 2 years, I mean, I remember there were many occasions when I thought, hey, what have I gotten into, right? But by the time it was the end of the third year, the scene was completely different, right? And then as you go further down the road, and what Palak just mentioned, you reach a situation wherein there are offers in business that you decide to take and you don't take. Whereas at the start, in many cases, you're also in a position where you want to take an offer. But yes, that is where a lot of people make a mistake. Uh, Especially when it comes to B2C brands, you need to see that the offer or the agreement that you get into is in line with the vision of your brand, right? So a lot of new businesses, especially in order to make sales or in desperation to grow the business, end up making wrong decisions there. Wrong from a branding perspective, because whatever collaborations you do, it must be in line with the vision of your brand, the ethos of your brand. Now that's important. So yeah, I think overall I would agree with everything that Palak said. Yeah.
And I think both of you again make important points, right? Number one, be clear about what your brand ethos is and what it stands for, and have the courage of your conviction to stay true to that and not keep changing based upon what person A or B or C says, right? Now, typically, a brand has a story. There's a narrative that gets built when you create a brand, right? And I had a quick look at your websites. It's all about telling a story, right? A wonderful story about how this came to be and what the tradition is, what the heritage is, right? So there is a certain storytelling piece that gets embedded into a brand, right? How did you guys go about it? I mean, how did you say, what, this is what I'm going to create, and this is the kind of storytelling that I believe will be important for my brand, whether it's Josephine or whether it is Ikaya. So, Adi?
Yeah, so for us, it was we basically saw an opportunity in the sense that we saw that the story of Pashmina was not really being told that well. And the story of Pashmina is beautiful. It's a story that goes back 600 years. But even the process itself, from the mountain goats in the Changthang in Ladakh,
Right.
all the way to the looms in downtown Srinagar, that story itself is very beautiful. So, I mean, as of 2021, I think there are a few brands that are telling the story, presenting the picture, the story behind the product, the whole romance of the cashmere shawl, as people have traditionally called it. They are presenting it. But what we did is that even though we were just a B2B company, and we still are primarily a B2B company, but what we decided was, let's do the branding. Let's make the brochures. Let's take the models all the way next to the Pashmina goats in Ladakh. Let's get the photo shoot done there. Let's fly drones over the downtown. So these were things that were not really done at that time. I'm talking about 4 years ago and stuff. So that sort of, even in the B2B business, when we sort of approached a lot of clients, especially in cold calls, you meet clients and they see all this branding, which they've never seen from a cashmere supplier from Kashmir before. At that point of time, today, it's more or less commonplace. It makes a huge difference. Why? Because what it does is it provides transparency. People know what they're buying. They see the story behind it. They just don't see the cloth, but they see the goats and the weavers, everybody. So that's what we did. And even though we're just a B2B brand, just a B2B exporter, but it made a lot of difference to us. And in B2C, obviously, if there is no branding, you can't survive, because B2C, I think, except apart from the product itself, it is also a business of perception. So if you're bad at perception, your brand is never, ever going to take off.
Correct. And Palak?
So, unlike Pashmina, I feel the story of Banaras has been told too much. And everyone is just trying to show ki our bichara weavers, our poor weavers, please give us some money and please pay the right price for it. And I'm just like, get lost from here, because I don't want that story.
Yes.
Like,
Yes.
if you see Louis Vuitton, and if you see, I keep on going to these French brands, by the way, because I feel they're just like our brands. They are banking on the artisans of their countries. Like if you
Yes.
see,
Yes.
if you see a Rolex ad, right? Or you see a watch brand, they'll always show the precision, and they'll show
Yeah.
they'll show the making of the watch. They never show the conditions that the people are living in. And the truth is, a lot of weavers have also sort of bettered their condition over time. I mean, I live in Banaras, and it's by choice they live where they live. Like some of them most definitely are not being paid the way they're supposed to be paid. But I'm not going to get money from my clients thinking कि मेरे बेचारे viewers पैसा नहीं तो मुझे पैसे दे दो, and in the end I put the money in my pocket.
Yeah.
So the story of Banaras has been sold too much. So my point was that I'm going to show a different side to Banaras. I'm going to sell a lifestyle. I'm going to show the modern woman. I'm going to show the modern woman who is like me, who's very India proud, and who's fitting in with the global culture.
Got it.
That was my narrative, because when I went to UK and I remember standing in the queue for some groceries, and I was humiliated really badly by some white lady. And I stood there and I'm like, hey, I'm much better than you. You know, I am educated. I know how to speak well. I know much more than you. I'm from a different culture. Like, why should I feel inferior? And why should I feel inferior wearing my own garment? At the end of the day, I'm wearing your garment, right?
Right.
So my story was to make the younger generation who are like me, like as in I keep myself as my muse at all points of time. And I'm like, a girl like me should feel comfortable wearing an Indian sari internationally. I mean, I wore a sari to Paris, and a lot of people stopped me in the middle of Champs-Elysees. I didn't wear a sari to the Indian community in Paris. I wore it bang in the center of the city.
Right.
I can be wearing my own Banarsi jacket and feel very proud. Like, my goal was to break the stereotypes around the embarrassment of feeling Indian.
Right.
And I wanted to show that, hey, the jacket that I'm wearing is definitely woven by the weavers of Banaras, but these people spent 300 hours making this jacket that I'm wearing. So the focus is not on the poverty of the weavers. The focus is on the 300 hours that have gone into this. So during all my communication, I literally told my team very strictly, and I'm like, I don't want a single weaver image anywhere. I want a weaver image where you show the hands. It's a skill of the hand. It's not the lifestyle of the weaver. Please, मुझे पैसे दे दो. I'm very poor, and please pay 50,000 for this jacket. That has taken me 10,000 to do.
Got it. So it's not a. So effectively, what I'm hearing you say is it resonates with the philosophy of NICE as well. In that, it is not an NGO development sector worldview. It is coming at it from the brand market standpoint, saying you pay for the value of the knowledge and the skill and the capability, not out of some charity work that you plan to do, right? So I think it is that approach, and that is the worldview that we believe that is required to be able to effect change.
Sanjay, whenever we buy things from international brands, like if I'm buying a 1.5 lakh bag from Prada, I'm not asking who's made it. I have faith in the brand that, that it's all handmade.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I'm not asking them to show me the weaver image or that this is made by so-and-so person. Anyway, the word sustainable has become like a normal word for us now. Like whenever someone says sustainable, I just listen to one ear and remove from the other. So every second person is using sustainability now.
So those are all gimmicky things.
And it's completely gimmicky.
Yeah. Because, you're right. I mean, I hear you. And, the whole point being that creating the brand effectively dissociates yourself from the savior complex. So, that's the important thing. Now, coming to Adi, you have a design studio in France, right?
Yes.
And I presume, so just help us understand what the objective of that design studio is. What does that do? And how is that connected with, let's say, Kashmir, where your viewers are? And then over to Palak, I want to ask you about, how do you go about your designs? In other words, because end of the day, the design industry has a lot of influencers, a lot of people who kind of talk about it, promote it, who are brands in and as of themselves. How does one navigate that path? And so I'll come to you with that question later. But first, let's hear from Adi about his design studio and the connection with Kashmir.
So setting up the design studio was an imperative step, considering the initial thing that we spoke about creating a seamless connection between the market and the production, right?
Yeah.
So what happens is that it becomes more of a center where communication with brands, with designers take place. So instead of being a production house that produces thousands and thousands of fabrics and gets the nakshas, and then you either print them or you embroider them or you weave them into the fabric, instead of that, what happens is you sit with the designers there. You sit with the designers, you meet designers, you create your own palettes of colors, your own patterns every season, mix, match, iterate, and you're basically able to create new offerings. Now, once you're able to create these new offerings, right, at the same time, you have to make sure that your production is able to produce the new offerings that you're proposing, right? So the idea was that master the design aspect or the design development aspect of it, and at the same time, master the production aspect of it. That's why when we started, we took the decision that, listen, I'm going to move from Amsterdam to Srinagar because I have to be there on the ground to make sure it works perfectly fine.
And you were studying in Amsterdam, is it? In
No, I was studying in Rotterdam.
Rotterdam.
I did my MBA there, the Rotterdam School of Management, and it's after that it was in fact in Amsterdam when we were. It was around Christmas, so we were all looking for a cashmere scarves. We're at the we're at the Pacey Hofstraat, and so I've got a lot of my Dutch and German friends, and we're going to these different labels there, and then I'm like, yeah, मैं तो कश्मीरी हूँ यार, ये तो Kashmir है, I know what the whole deal is. That was one of the things that actually sparked interest, so like the seed, I think the seed was planted right there, which sort of germinated over time.
Right.
But then yes, the fundamental reason for having the center in France is basically so that there is better communication, whether it's with retail buyers, whether it's with designers, whether it is with merchandisers. So not just in terms of design development, but also in terms of communication, right? So you own this part and you own this part, so that makes a seamless front end and back end, which also took us time, in the sense that there had to be proper synergy between the front end and the back end. Like I said, first 2 years, when we thought we were going no, but third year we thought, okay, great, it's going to be a fantastic journey.
Great. So you kind of built a bridge between the design end of the house and the market with the production side.
Oh, absolutely. Every single trade fair that is, every single conference that is, we have people going there, feedback, everything. So I personally am not that much involved with it. In fact, it's my co-founder who sort of heads most of it. But then what happens is everybody has his own role to play. You delegate people their roles based on their abilities and interest. And then exactly. And then you synergize both of them together to create that bridge that you're talking about.
Got it. And Palak, how did you go about the design? I mean, typically in all these high-end products, you tend to have an army of designers of all kinds, who need to be cultivated, who need to be influencers, who need to kind of, provide their inputs and guidance. How did you go about it?
So my head designer is my father. He is the mastermind behind everything that you see at Akaya. So in the beginning, it was very difficult for me to really imagine now you're a wholesaler, and as a wholesaler, you've never created collections.
Right.
You've always sort of created one-off pieces. You get inspired by the tomb. You create a tomb wali sari. Mm-hmm. You get inspired by an orange. You create fruit collection saris. For many years, I told him, I'm like, Dad, let's create collections. That's how we'll become a brand. Otherwise, you'll never become a brand. But somehow that he never registered it, because he's just like, this collection is rubbish. I'll have stock. I'll be stock accumulated, and I will never be able to, liquidate those pieces, because these funny pieces that you want me to make, no one will make it, and all that back and forth. So somehow after, I think 4 years, I got him to create a collection. I begged him. I said, please, for me, do it. Luckily, he happened to do a complete sellout of that collection. Then after a couple of years, one collection led to another. Then we actually followed a very interesting model for Akaya, and we actually got designers to collaborate with us.
You got designers to collaborate
with us. So we got Abraham and Thakur, and we got Ashton, and we got these people to come in as designers. And we made sure that we got people who never worked with the textile industry. So much like my experience, when ignorance is bliss, and you tend to ask stupid things, and you tend to really create masterpieces. We got these designers who never really worked, who worked very little with textile, so they never knew what the limitations of textile industries really were. Mm-hmm. So they tended to come up with really different designs that were never found in the textile industry. So that's how our initial collections were made. And we also became the first brand to really collaborate with designers and to really create collections in collaboration with designers. So Sari brand, first of all, is creating designer collections.
How easy or difficult was that? And
difficult to get the first designer on board to collaborate. We were very fortunate that Mr. Abraham and Thakur, Abraham Thakur and Rakesh Thakur and David Abraham came on board and created it for us. It became easier with every next collection because we only made sure, like I said, it was building a brand says a lot of no's. So we made sure to say no to real riffraff designers who want to come and create stuff with us.
Right.
So I was like, I'll do it with the best, or I won't do it at all. One collab a year and only with the best. Even if I don't have a collection a year, it doesn't matter.
So you were very clear about the fact that you want to work with with the best. A, B, you want to work with people. Let's say one collection a year, and three, you said that I'm picking designers who don't have the experience of working with textiles, right?
Who don't know the limitations of working with textiles.
So that again, because then their imagination gets unbounded.
There's creativity there, right? And I also made sure that every collaboration is better than the other.
Right, right.
So I didn't fall trap to the fact that, oh shit, I have no one to collaborate with this year. Let's collaborate with someone who I think is okay, but just because I need to get a collection out, or let's collaborate with a fresher, or let's collaborate with someone
Yeah.
who's, who he thinks is very good. But I made sure I didn't do it. I left a year in the middle also for collaboration. Then once this whole collection flow happened, my dad sort of like realized the importance of it. And I was like, I'm like, Dad, it's important to start creating our own collections now.
Right.
So we started generating our own collections.
Got
So
it.
it's been about 3 years we started generating our own collection. And then again, 2 years ago, my dad felt the need that he needed other designers to come in on board in terms of hiring. So, the truth be told, we have an inventory of more than 1 lakh pieces, including my dad's business and this. And there are only 3 people who are designing. 2 people are for Ikaya, and my father and my uncle who's designing for my dad's company. So, it's basically, I mean, like, I feel like my learning from this is that you can't go from 0 to 100 overnight. And I don't think you should as well. Learn along the way.
Yeah.
And don't try and I mean, like, I do know of people who set up 10 people design team in anticipation that they're going to need all of them.
Right, right.
Go slowly, go at your own pace. There's no need, and as and when you need it, and then you grow it.
There's no hurry. Yeah, I hear you. And which is no, and now there was COVID and everything else, and therefore there was a huge impetus to many brands and product companies and others to go online, right, Adi? And you talked about B2C, and a large part of the B2C is actually the online bit. Right. And in the case of Palak, she opened up retail stores, which is kind of very contrary to what, received wisdom would have said. So let me hear from you, Adi, about this whole idea about how you plan to do your B2C. Is it by setting up your stores? Is it going entirely online? And then, creating your own designs, etc.?
Yeah, so before I get into the details of that, I'd like to point out that we've been into the B2B business so long and it's so deep into our DNA that Palak mentioned about her father's be saying that, you can't make a collection, there's inventory. I suffer from the same thing. And what happened was
Maybe
that
you guys need to talk then.
yeah, and what happened is it took a few months of, in fact, Safia, my co-founder, convincing me that, listen, it's a worthwhile investment, this is what we have to do next. And anyways, we're on now. So how we are going to do it is, obviously we're going to do it online, and at the same time we'll be doing it with third-party retailers as well. So we have spoken to a few multi-brand retailers, some of whom already stock some of our clients as well. So we've already done that, and it got a little bit delayed because of the whole Corona thing. But yes, I think the next couple of months we're going to have a soft launch, and it'll be a new journey for us. And I can sort of, of course, my co-founder and the other people can sort of visualize a lot better what a B2C brand is. I'm more of a manufacturer, wholesaler, so I'm still learning the ropes there, right? But I see that it's a great opportunity, and online, of course. And at the same time, yes, for us, it was a natural progression, I believe, to do that. Because even when we look at the great players in the cashmere game, you look at the topmost known brand, in fact, you look at Loro Piana, they were wool traders, then they were B2B people, and then they went into retail. Same thing with Brunello Cucinelli, started out with 30 sweaters, which he made of cashmere, all colored orange. And then he went into retail, and today it's, I think, a $2.7 billion company. So yes, a natural progression for us. And the sales channels are going to be the ones that I just mentioned. Yes.
Fantastic. A journey of 1,000,000 miles begins with a single step, right?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Fantastic. And Palak, let's hear your side.
No, I mean, like, I had gone online actually 2 years before the pandemic happened.
Right.
But of course, I never sort of paid too much attention to it because I was like, oh, let's go online. We'll see. I was stuck with the wrong developer and bloody, like lots of like issues that happen. But I feel like luck was on my side is that by the time the pandemic happened, I had a hold of e-commerce. I was sort of like doing 5-6 lakhs here and there, just feeling happy, and I was like, "Chalo, kuch na kuch ho raha hai." And but my costs were very high. So when the pandemic hit, overnight, I moved everything online, and I found a very cheap and quick way of shooting without actually having much human contact. So by the time it was March, we already had moved completely online, and we deployed a lot of resources online, and we started our online business. And then we sort of came up with impromptu suggestions like WhatsApp calling. We even sort of held our WhatsApp sales by June. So everything we sort of like learned on our way. So like even right now, when the markets have gone back to the normal state right now, because people in India are shopping at this point of time, and they are stepping out. A lot of them are stepping out. Our e-commerce is also still running. And now we've actually unboxed a whole new kind of clientele who have gotten a lot more faith in us now. And now we're sort of like doing e-commerce and we're doing offline. So like both has actually worked out for us. And then we thought we'll open another store at this one time, because we got a very good opportunity and the costs were very low. So we're like, right now think of this as advertisement during COVID, because this year we haven't advertised at all.
Right.
So for
We
people
locked
like,
in the landlord for 3 years or something with the low rentals.
I mean, low rentals also, but like also like really sort of like measuring your costs. So like I didn't want to like go all bored and be like, this is not a muscle game for me. This is, as in I don't know if you guys know, I am a Gujarati.
Yeah.
So there is never muscle game for us Gujaratis. It's all about the balance sheet at all points of time. So if the balance sheet permits, we do it. If it doesn't permit, we don't do it.
Got it. Now, so there is so in your case, it's like almost an omni-channel approach, right? I mean, you've got,
Yeah.
online, you've got retail and all of that. And now, Adi is moving from a B2B, to an online presence. Presumably at some point there would be retail stores as well. Now, given your experiences in the last 5, 8, 9 years that you've been there, what are the top 2, 3 things you would tell a budding entrepreneur in your space, in
In
the
the in,
fashion?
in the sari space?
Yeah, in the sari space. And and sari, I'm saying, I'm using it as a metaphor because it's not just the saris, because there's a lot of design element, there is merchandising, in your retail stores and all that. What is it that you would tell them not to do? First Palak, then Adi.
I feel, as in, I get a lot of entrepreneurs coming up to me and asking me for advice. I think one thing that I tell them very often is that don't be overconfident.
Don't
Don't be overconfident.
be overconfident. Yeah.
Just because your family loves your product does not mean your product is good. First
Right.
of all, the minute your family and your friends shell out that money and it starts reflecting in your bank account is when the product actually has demand.
Correct. When somebody actually spends money.
Someone actually spends money, because it could be that I create a jacket and my family loves me, and my friends are like, oh my god, I totally buy it. Are they actually buying it is a question.
Right.
Have they worn it is a question, right? So that's, I feel, very important. And I feel like a lot of people nowadays don't do enough research. Simply launching a brand becomes more of an ego thing for them. Like, here I have my own brand, I'm running my own label, great. But have you really done your target audience? Have you really done, every business like Josephine and Ekaya is a very well thought out business.
Right.
Aditya and I both never just one day, we didn't like wake up out of bed and be like, let's start our own brand because it'll look cool on my resume. No, it was a very well thought out, sort of like a lot of sleepless nights and a step-by-step process. But at the same time, I would also tell them to not overthink and overcomplicate things. You've got to give it a try. If you have a good idea, well researched back idea, and if you find a gap in the market, go for it by all means.
And don't be afraid of failing.
Never be afraid of failing. And also another thing that I would say is take calculated risks. Take risks, most definitely, but don't put all your money and all your eggs in one basket. Remember, I mean, all along these 9 years and up until now, if I'm taking a risk, my risk is I always have a cap on the amount of money that I'm going to spend on something. Right? I will never take a risk with things just because I have money in my bank account. I mean, I don't want to exhaust everything now and not be left with anything in the future.
Got it.
So like limit your risk as well. Like sort of, let's say, for example, I'm going to need to take a risk with 5 lakhs. So if an opportunity comes under 5 lakhs, and if you know that you'll only lose that much amount of money, by all means go for it. But if it's 50 lakhs and if your gut is saying, but what if your gut is wrong at some point in time, you'll end up losing that sort of money and also confidence and motivation.
True, true. Adi,
Yeah.
what would you tell entrepreneurs not to do?
Yeah, first of all, don't look at things with rose tinted glasses, and don't think that you are the best on day one, because you're definitely not, right? And
So be brutally honest.
yeah, exactly. And there will always be people who are better than you, and you will always fail on certain occasion, and you have to get back up and work your way through the whole thing, right?
Yeah.
The second thing is, don't again, don't be overcome. Don't think you have all the knowledge with you, right? There are a lot of people there in the world who are willing to share knowledge with you. You could go to players who are already established there for decades. See if somebody gives you time. Just a small meeting for somebody who's just starting a business. Let me tell you that one meeting with a trader selling the same product for 40 years is going to give you immense knowledge. It might even change your business plan altogether.
True.
And apart from that, I would also say that look at it as a business. Now, what I mean by that is, if you are a designer and you want to start a brand, you need to understand how numbers play as well.
Very important. I think it's very important.
Yeah.
A lot of people ignore that.
Exactly, because then it's going to be a small hole in your hull, and your ship is going to sink. All right.
True.
On the other hand, if you are a businessman, or who sees an opportunity like I did, for example, in this particular industry, try and understand the design element of it as well, because this, at the end of the day, is a business where design is extremely important as well. So knowledge and numbers, make sure you have both of this. Just don't feel overconfident that you can go ahead and do this, and get those mentors that you need. And mentors will make a big difference to your business. Big
True.
difference to your business.
I agree. So don't let your ego drive the agenda, that I want to see my name out there in big neon lights. None of that.
Yeah, because then the probability of the neon light staying on is going to be a lot lesser. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's why.
True, true. Now, going forward, right, we are emerging hopefully from the COVID era and into another era, which we are not very sure what it will be, but certainly, hopefully, it will be better this year than the previous year. Um, how would you think about the world now with regard to your businesses? And what, therefore, if I'm an entrepreneur listening to you today, what will you tell me about 2021, 2022, and how should I think about
Uh, yeah. Okay. So, actually, how we sort of looked at it right now, we thought that first of all, you look at your targets, your target market, and see how the target market is going to perform. In the sense that, if you have people who are working from home, a lot more people would like to buy things for their home.
it?
If you see online sales of certain retailers, you'll see that home textiles have shot up in the last few months. Why? Because people are sitting at home, and they now, instead of buying a scarf, they probably would like to have a little carpet or a wall hanging with them.
Right.
Right?
Right.
See how the mentality of people is changing. Second thing, what COVID has basically done is, it has accelerated the shift to online purchase by a few years.
Right.
And that's the reason why you see online businesses have done extremely well during the COVID times. Right? Because cost of acquisition has been zero in many cases, where people were forced to look for an online alternative, and the experience for online shopping is a lot of people for the first time, and therefore the size of the online market grew phenomenally, and it grew like by a very large percentage. So I feel that the coming year, obviously, the market is going to bounce back, demand is going to increase again. And one has to look at, like, for example, we never thought about the wedding market in India.
Right.
We never thought about it. But what we realized a couple of months ago was that weddings are going to be small. People aren't going to spend on weddings. People are going to spend on gifting. So that money goes into gifting. So the ticket items of the gifts increase. That becomes an opportunity for a product like ours.
Right.
And we suddenly saw that we approached a lot of wedding planners and people of the sort, and we suddenly found a new market for ourselves. So see whatever opportunities come, and and go for them. It's as simple as that. Yeah.
Excellent. I think that's a very nice way of explaining this. And Palak,
I mean, I agree with Aditya completely, and I mean, my only thing is that take it one day at a time and be adaptable.
be adaptable.
Don't have too many high hopes that the market's going to bounce back and start making your investments and start making your planning. plan, but also be adaptable for this year because you don't know what is going to come.
Take calibrated
So
steps.
you could really have a very good sales, and I hope we all do. I hope we all bounce back, but we could also have another slump.
Yeah.
So like be prepared and like be sort of like adaptable, and like I feel take it one day at a time and sort of like innovate as you move along. I feel that is a big theme for last year and this year.
Right. No, I think extremely sane and valuable inputs.
Yeah, I think every new entrepreneur must realize that your business is probably not going to be always the way you envisioned it to be. You need to make
True.
those iterations. If you don't make those iterations, it's going to sink. So
Right.
those iterations have to be made.
So in your mind, you need to be like I think Palak said, constantly adapting and
Yes,
adopting new learnings, all of it.
absolutely.
One question has just okay, it's already 6 o'clock. A question has come in saying, how do you ensure from Namrata? How do you ensure that your uh, back-end weavers, artisans, craftspeople, whoever you work with, that they get a fair wage because both of you guys are targeting the higher end of the market, and therefore there is a brand value that gets associated. How do you ensure that their wages or their living standards improve?
Can I take Aditya?
Yes.
Oh,
Yes.
yes, indeed,
Yeah.
please.
So basically, how it really works in Banaras is, we don't have people working for us, but
Yeah.
all the weavers in Banaras are actually entrepreneurs.
Right.
So they are, these guys are actually single-handed entrepreneurs. So the truth is, we don't pay them wage.
Right.
We pay them the asking price that they give us. So let's say,
Right.
for example, a weaver has woven a sari. The truth is, as a buyer, I don't know whether it's the right price that he's quoted or not.
Mm-hmm.
He's saying that it's for 30,000, and if in case, and the weavers now, because they've had so many avenues of buying, they, literally weavers threaten us at some point of time. So literally my own design and my own collection, if I don't pay that asking price, they'll be like, fine, we'll go and sell it in the market. So I'm actually forced to pay them a little over what everyone else is paying so that my designs don't go out.
Right.
So
Right.
gone are the days when we were producing standardized product. Right now, my designs are going out in the market and the weaver is selling it to other people for a much higher price.
And there is no way you can do
There's
design.
no way I can stop it because I don't want to pay them. I don't even know whether these guys are charging the right price for it. First of all,
Right.
the weaver could also be charging just out of his whim because he thinks it's a very expensive looking thing, and he
Right.
could be charging what he wants to, and because it's a designer collection and it's a kaya, so he will charge and he'll actually go and charge double the price to my competitor because
Got
they
it.
will come kaya ka saman laye hain aapke paas.
Got it.
So now, how does one ensure that the weaver is not overcharging us?
Yeah. 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 So
There
the
should be
entire
a
chain.
forum for us as well, by the way, I feel.
Yeah. Yeah. So therefore, I think what's happening is, willy-nilly, the entire chain is benefiting because you're creating the brand. The weaver knows that he's creating for you, so he charges more, and you in turn, because of the brand value, you're able to charge more than what the other guys are.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And what
Absolutely.
about you, Adi? How does it work similarly in a B2B business?
It works similarly in Kashmir. Now, what happens is it's all a matter of supply and demand. Now, when power looms moved in, wages went down because a lot of production started going on power looms, whereas there was not that much work left in terms of the amount of fabric that had to be made on handlooms. Therefore, simple law of economics, supply and demand, the wages went down. However, now, right, there is a surge in demand of handmade in India, vocal for local handloom. So therefore, wages are actually going up. Yes, see, what happens is that I think Palak was mentioning it about 20 minutes ago that a lot of people tend to brand it as बेचारा weaver है, इसको आप मजलूम है, इसको रोजगारी मिलेगी तो आप हैंडलूम का खरीद लीजिए, right? At least in Kashmir right now, we went through that phase, but that phase is over because, like I said, demand and supply. There is so much demand for handloom now that wages have actually risen in the past few years, and maximum wages have risen of carpet weavers. Carpet weavers were leaving carpet weaving by the droves, and now there's so few left that the wages are high. Same thing with wood carvers in Kashmir.
Right.
There's so few left today. A wood carver in Kashmir makes almost the same as a junior engineer in the government and working in the public works department. Right?
Okay.
Exactly. So it's basically they're market forces,
Your
right?
market economics. Yeah. Yeah.
That's all it is. That's all it is.
Right. And that's great. There's one second. There's another question that's coming from Manjulika. How important is it to create something unique or a game changer, or you say, you know what, I believe in something, I will just focus on that. In other words, do you go with your conviction, or do you say, I'm going to make something that is a signature product? Between the two, which ones would you encourage people to focus on?
I'd say a balance between the two. Don't go on creating something so unique that you get so obsessed about it that you're the only consumer for it, first of
Right.
all.
Yeah.
That's very important. Like a lot of people I know are so fixated, like they come up to me, they're like, we have this great idea and it's not in the market. And I'm like, well, you're the only user for it.
Yeah, like a
You're just
square
not the
wheel.
user for
Yeah.
it.
Mm.
But
Yeah.
at the same time, it has to be also like your gut has to say it, you have to do market research. I feel like it's a combination of it, right?
Right.
And something that is scalable. I feel like any idea must be scalable, and
Yes.
like you've got to see whether you have competitors. And I feel, to be very honest, and I say this while I'm really talking right now, at times it's good to have a couple of competitors,
Right.
because you know that you're not the single person trying aiming at it.
Mm, mm, mm.
You know
Yes.
there are other offerings, and that customers are there for it. So you know that there are customers for it actually.
Got it. Okay. Right. So, so that brings us to the end of this session. Thank you very, very much indeed for sparing time, an hour, from 5 to 6 today. It's
Thank
been excellent, very, very helpful to all our listeners and audience members. Thanks, Adi. Thanks, Palak. And do stay
Thank you.
engaged with NICE, because our philosophies are similar, and about trying to create a brand India by reviving our cultural artifacts and heritage and creating brands, and creating an ecosystem. So our job here is to create an ecosystem for entrepreneurs who can all become like you guys, right? We need a big, big number of them going out. Thank you very much. And before I end, I just want to make a quick announcement about the business plan competition that we all have, uh, that we're announcing. We want everyone to participate in this. So Palak and Adi, if you can also spread the word around for the Aarohana Nice Business Plan competition, that will be very, very useful. And we have a session on the 16th Saturday, where we have again a double session. There is Yogesh Chaudhary of Jaipur Rugs. He'll talk about his journey, followed by understanding financial statements. I think both Palak and Adi talked about the importance of knowing your numbers as well as staying true to your own philosophy. We'll get a dose of that on the 16th Saturday. Thank you all very much. Good evening and bye bye.
Thank you.